Welcome back to MVM. Today I am bringing you a sponsored preview. This one is for Axiom Arena Combat by Megacosm. This is, as you'd expect, an arena-based game where you are going head-to-head against another player in order to defeat their champions. Each player is going to enter the arena with 3 fighters and a pre-constructed deck. You're going to see the game here laid out in front of me on this playmat. Again, this is, of course, a Kickstarter, so everything you see here is in prototype form. I've already got some pre-made decks here, and my fighters already out on the battlefield. You're going to start with 3 fighters. Each player is going to get to choose these fighters. You're going to be able to come with your own pre-made deck or use the cards available, and you could build up to 2 decks with what comes in the starter set. So each one of these fighters is going to have special abilities. They're going to have damage they can do, and they're going to have health values. When you're choosing your characters, it's important to denote what these values are, because you want to get a good mix of heavy hitters and support characters versus tanks and things like that. In addition, each character is going to have a type. For example, Crazy 8 is a tech fighter. This means that I can use cards when building my deck that are tech cards, or I can use Crazy 8's signature cards. And you're going to be able to build a deck that consists of 30 cards. You can kind of mix and match this deck however you want, as long as you're following those basic rules. Fighters cards and cards that fit with their abilities. Now, there are some characters that are the same type. For example, we have 2 stasis fighters here on the board going head-to-head against each other. So everyone is going to build that deck or come with a pre-constructed deck, and you're going to grab the health trackers for these characters. You're going to place a crystal on their current health, and it's going to drop down until eventually they are dead. When all 3 of your characters are dead, you are out of the game and your opponent wins. Likewise, your goal is to knock the opponent out of the game. Now, there will be other game modes introduced, potentially through the Kickstarter, through stretch goals and things like that, but I'm focusing on just the 1v1 skirmish that is the bread and butter of Axiom. So once everyone has chosen their decks, you're going to start the game. You're going to set up your fighters on either side of the board, and you're going to notice some small hexagons and a large hexagon here in the center. The large hexagon can just hold more fighters. Then you're going to get to choose a starting hand of 6 cards. This is a little unique compared to some of these other games. You actually have some control over the cards that are going to be in your starting hand. You're going to get to draw them out yourself and choose how you start the game. At that point, you're going to randomly determine who's going to be the starting player. Each player's turn is going to consist of 3 phases: the alpha phase, the events phase, and the omega phase. During the alpha phase, you're going to get to draw cards. So you're always going to get to draw 1 random card. Now, from this point on, you're just stuck with the top deck. You don't get to actually choose your cards. But you're going to add that card to your hand, and you're going to trigger any abilities from cards that are out in the field that trigger during the omega phase. You might have some support cards that heal you or do damage or cause other status effects to players on the board. They're all going to trigger during that phase. Then you're going to move on to the event phase, which is when you're going to actually be taking actions and playing cards from your hand. Now, there's no mana generation, there's no economy or anything like that in this game. You're just limited by the number of cards you're allowed to play. You are allowed to play 2 signature cards, a support card, and a stasis card. So you could play up to 4 cards if you have the right combination of cards in your hand. And when you play these cards, they're going to have very specific effects on the battlefield. They're going to do damage to enemy heroes. They're going to boost the health values of your heroes, or they're potentially going to generate energy. I have one here in my hand, Inertia, which actually just gets added onto a character to potentially increase their combat strength. Now you notice that every character has a minimum combat strength and a maximum. Once I hit 20 damage, that's the most damage this character is ever going to be able to do. You'll also notice a little R here that says R6. Now what that means is this card actually cannot be played until round 6. You're going to be keeping track of the rounds of the game, and you're going to have access to stronger cards later on in the game. So when you're choosing your hand of starting cards, it might benefit you to take some round 1 or round 2 cards, because you know you're going to play them early. You don't have to try to luck into cards to play. Most of these cards you can just play whenever and however on your turn. So like, for example, this one says that I can draw cards. So I just play that card, I draw another card. Some of these cards, like the signature cards, affect just one fighter. For example, this Crazy 8 card, only Crazy 8 can use this card and do this ability, in which this case, he's going to actually reduce damage being taken on by an attack. For the most part, you're only able to play cards on your turn, but you'll notice that this one says reaction on it. In that specific case, you can actually play these cards out of turn or on other players' turns. In addition to playing the cards from your hands to do actions and fight and move around the board, every character is going to have a basic attack and movement ability. You're going to be able to just move your characters around the board and attack based on that attack ability. You can attack anyone that is in the same square as you. So you're going to be able to do damage to other opponents that way. And whenever you do damage, you're going to be moving down these damage tracks as your characters take damage. When you play the cards, they're going to have a variety of status effects. For example, Tundra has an ice counter that can kind of power up over the course of the game, and you're going to be able to boost these abilities. But the main goal here is to just tactically maneuver around this board, doing the most damage possible to your opponent. When your characters are knocked out, their character card is flipped over, placed over them to mark them as dead. Now, you might be stuck with some cards in your hand. For example, I might be stuck with a Crazy 8 card that I can't use because Crazy 8's dead. Well, on your turn, once you have a dead hero, you have the ability to call a card out. You can just discard a card out and draw a new card to replace it. That'll kind of keep your hand fresh and stop you from getting stuck with a whole hand of cards you can't use because your hero's dead. And as you continue playing, more and more of these characters are going to reach that dead status, and once that happens, the game is over. So play is going to just keep going back and forth with each player doing these phases. Now, at the end of your turn, after you've taken all your actions, is the Omega phase. The Omega phase is basically an upkeep. Any effects that trigger during Omega phase are going to trigger now. Certain status effects that only last for one round. It's important to denote that nothing can interfere with the Omega phase. There's no instance, there's nothing that can pop in and change the course of that. And that Omega phase lasts until the next player starts their turn. So you're not really going to be interrupting that or interfering with that at all. And gameplay is going to continue back and forth between players until one player has reached that victory condition. So that is Axiom Arena Combat. This game is on Kickstarter right now, so take a look at the Kickstarter page and see all the final components, including all the final heroes. I was given 6 heroes here, which is enough to make 2 decks, but there could be more heroes announced as far as stretch goals. And you can also see these cards in more detail. There are a lot of cards in this game that do a ton of different things, including, like I said, all those different status effects, moving and manipulating the board state, doing extra damage, possibly even surpassing the maximum damage your character can normally do, and things like that. Now, keep in mind that when you're building your deck, you're going to be able to choose from any of these different heroes and mix and match them to your heart's content. You can try out any different combination. You can focus on 3 heroes of the same type so that you can build your deck focused, or you can try to balance them and spread them across 3 different types so that you can kind of have flexibility among your decks. So take a look at their Kickstarter page and then come back here, ask any questions, leave any comments. I'd love to know what you think about this game. And as always, thank you for watching, subscribing, and following us here at MVM, and I will see you next time.